We are. Welcome. Tonight I have a painting which I started yesterday, and it's just got a really simple ground on it. Just some blinds and things as well. I can do this without destroying my orchids. There you go. Lovely job. Yeah. Yeah, stops the worst of the light. So now the clocks have changed. Got rather a different job of managing the lighting in here. So the aim for this tonight is to carry on from these colours, mix larger quantities, create the more pronounced tonal contrasts and things that I need to tell the story, to tell the image, and also build up a much stronger surface. So at the moment this is all very, very thin. I put some gloves on as well. It's a very flat layer of paint. Ooh, I've got a few new brushes to get going on as well. They'll do for starters. I might even introduce some soft brushes. I'll plonk them there. So what I'm going to need to be doing is mixing slightly larger quantities of paint, and I've got my little colour shaper here, little rubber ended thing. There it is. So that might come in useful. This has already been spatulaed, which helps flatten it out. And a few fairly simple flat brushes. So I've already got some colours from yesterday. I've got a basic ground down. So now I have to think about what comes next. And yeah, well, this is an interesting time. I haven't really got any details in the bottle. I'm going to need this sort of cooler green onto here. So a little squeeze of Viridian probably wouldn't hurt. Yeah. A bit of that on there. And yeah, so I'm sort of setting out some colour themes. I've got more contrast to bring into this. I've got a little bit here. I was trying to keep it low, but I think that can go up a bit. And I've got this green and orange thing happening. So the greens are going to harmonise with the background. Hopefully that will make them not stand out too much. And the oranges will sort of sit out. So that's the thing that's telling the visual story. And this is just a kind of it's like a pillar of interest, just holding things steady. I want a sense of distance as well, which means having some contrast here. I haven't got the lights up on what do they call them? Chinese lanterns, I think, yet. In the background, I think it can probably be grayer. So I've got this colour here, And it looks very grey on the palette. But if I pick a bit up and put it down, that's pretty much the colour. Certainly doesn't stand out. So that's quite an interesting one. But I haven't got the brighter colours up yet. So yeah, I'm going to want some variations on this. And probably accentuate. What will I be accentuating? There's a passage of the light, so a more creamy yellowy sort of colour coming in this side. The shadows are already quite bluish, so I think that works. So there's slightly violet effect. I'll get some greens in there as well. They'll have some commonality with these greens, which are down here. So once I'm comfortable about what those colours are, I think I can mix decent qualities and just sort of put them on as slabs. The other thing is this sort of transition between the foreground and the background, and I think I might make that grayer. So at the moment I've got this, is that the orangey colour? That's the one, or thereabouts. I really want a grayer version of that. So I've got a grey here, and let's lighten that until it matches tonally, which is probably around there. Chuck a load of yellow ochre in it. It's already yellower, isn't it? A little bit of red. I'll use a cool red. No, let's make this even more grey. That's more like it. Yeah, so off we go. Let's put a bit of that on. That cools things down a bit. I want a bigger brush for this. Yes, sadly no Graham today. I've given him the night off so he can go to a pop concert with his friends. But do feel free to send me a comment. Hi Josie. Lovely to see you here. And I know a lot of people watch this and don't say anything about it, so don't be afraid to pop me a message or any suggestions. Share what you're thinking. So yes, if I sort of break up some of this and put a bit into the background as well. Again, it seemed like I mixed quite a lot of paint there, but I didn't. And what I'm doing here mostly is just trying to get rid of some of those sort of darker, warmer colours to create a bit more distinction between this sort of orangey bit and the orangeness of the Chinese lanterns, which do need to stand out a bit more. I can create a bit more light in there, a bit more inside the bottle as well. Maybe not the whole thing. And if I break some of these edges as well, then it won't be too hard to bring some other colour back. So yeah, even thicker, proper thick paint. Bits of fluff in it, I didn't want that. Well, that's great, isn't it? That's definitely greyer now. Go back to the orange a little bit. A bit of that in here. Somewhere in between the two. Flatten that off. Maybe that needs to be a bit higher up. About here. I'll put the shadows back in afterwards. And I've already pretty much used all the paint that I mixed. So I do want to keep that colour on it. I might do a thing as well. I wonder if I should turn that bottle a little bit. No, I think it's okay as it is. I'll leave that. So here I'm into brush mixes already. So you can see where I'm mixing that on the palette, and that's just a flat bit of colour. So I can try it out, see if it works. And if it does, then I kind of have to go back over it again and mix more in order to make a proper mark, where I'd want a smaller brush as well to do that with. So let's just get back into that grey and break that up. It's interesting how the different directions of brush strokes will affect how it appears too. Okay. Let's clean that off. I'm going to gather this up so it's in a nice neat little pile. Then I can match the colour in future. I'm running out of mixing space, so who knows, I might move over to an additional palette at some point. So other things that I don't have yet are the colours for the bottle. I just make a slightly weaker version of this green. It's super intense there. That's way more than I'm going to need at any point, but if I want to add little bits, this is nowhere near as potent as just dipping my brush or knife in the green out of the tube. Make a bit more of that. Okay. Let's get a bit of blue. Yeah. Let's pop that over here. Bit of yellow ochre in it. Have a white just to lighten it slightly. Is that going to do the job for my dark greens? And do I want them to go on first or afterwards? I think I might put them on first. This is where a slightly smaller brush might be good. A little short flat, fairly old one, so it's a bit fuzzy. That's the wrong green. Oh, so I'm settling into this a little bit. I have been painting during the day, so I may well have used up all the oxygen in my brain, but we'll see. But yeah, just for the sake of getting this on, that looks like a good green. Where else am I going to want that? Yeah, this sort of bottom of the bottle kind of thing. Other places where it turns up. There's this little hump here where the lights go over the top. Will improve it somewhat. Yeah, bit of drawing on there too. Ooh. Right, so there's a very blue-green that kind of comes down the edge of the bottle here. Probably paste a bit more of that on there. It's all the way up to the top. There's sort of a diagonal. So the lights and things that go on top of it are going to shape it afterwards. So this isn't doing all of the work. Oh, now that's mixing a little bit with what's behind it. That's what the colour shaper's for. And then I'll just put in a few splodges just to give us where the neck of the bottle goes. Some around that side as well. Yeah, okay. Paint's getting thinner again here, so yeah, good place to try and wake that up. Now I've got that deep green, I can look for other places it goes. So is there any in this leaf? I think it's yellower there. What about here? That's browner in there. I'm going to pop a little bit there for that shadow. I'm going to pop a little bit in there for that shadow. And they can both benefit from the bluey greenness. Anywhere on the stalk? Doesn't go very far. Shadow on the inside. So the lights are going to do all of the jobs here. Anywhere else? No. So the other green it's slightly yellower. I'm just going to move over one. The yellow ochre lightens it slightly. That should do it. That is in here. You can barely tell the difference, but there is a difference. It is in here. That needs another colour behind it, so I'm not going to get too carried away with that. A little bit at the back. A little bit that gets very yellow at the front, so might come back to that. I've got that greeny background colour, but if I'm going to change that at all, which I think I might have to, actually, that's going to be, it's going to borrow a little bit of this. So I've got this colour here. Let's put it there, and let's put a bit of this browny colour in it. Let's see what it does to it. Let's change it a bit. Get the excess off this brush. I can kind of go straight for that. Let's see what it does. Oh yes, when I did the drawing I moved this up a bit because I don't like it where it is, so a bit of extra thinking for me to do there. Do I like that colour? I do. It's grayer. I prefer it grayer. I prefer it as thicker marks as well. I keep spreading it thin. I don't think that's what I want. So I might have to mix a fairly large quantity of that, but before I do that I want to be very sure about the colour I'm mixing. Put that on, take a step back. Is that too bright? No, I think that's okay. It's a little bit greener than that, but where else? Yeah, that comes up to there. Again, I'm preferring that slightly thicker paint. Okay. If I get that the other side, it should make sense of it. So this paint that's on the surface now is still, the ground is still wet, but it's not as mobile as when it first went on. Just a little corner inside that leaf, but we'll figure that out later on. There's some borrowed colour that goes onto the reflection on the bottle, but yeah, that's almost a separate issue. As that expands out, yeah, definitely going to have to mix some more of that. So now I'm starting to think more about the order in which I'm going to do things. So the other thing worth paying attention to is that little sort of horizon line is going to move downwards. And I can get some other colours in there as well. So I'm going to get a bit of this sort of crisper green colour in there too, which will also come into the top of this. And what else? Oh, a little bit in there. Oh no. The lump. I hate lumps. So that, pop that in. That's fine. So yeah, I quite like those broken marks, and there's room for some sort of yellower versions as well. So I might have to mix some more of this, which means I don't want to use all of it up and then have to try and match it again later. I'm going to lighten that. I'm going to put a bit of this yellowy colour into it. And ask myself, is that too different, or is it just different enough? The fact that the brush is already loaded with the old colour means that I might just get away with that, but there's going to be some in here and under there. Quite a bit around here actually. And that's going to start to brighten up those areas. I don't want to go too bright because I still want the bright highlights from the twig as it goes across. There we go. A broken line across the top of the previous drawing. So but again, I'm still thinking in background here. Once I'm comfortable with this background, I can probably go for a actually putting some of the main bits of painting in. There, that's a nice little bit of light carrying across. And it's starting to liven up a little bit now. So I will want some background in order to sort of refine these other shapes and edges. Might even break some of them so that when I do put lines over the top, it's a bit more forgiving. And I'll probably have a slightly yellower version in places. Get a bit into there as well. I don't want too much of it to be like dry brush. Yeah. So then what's next? What's next with my bottle? Well, let's go to that smaller brush. I've got a few too small. It's a bit more like it. Okay. Let's take some of this creamy colour, a bit of that green, and do a brush mix and find out that's completely wrong. Yeah, that's way too much. This needs to be a knife mix after all. Oh, that's a bit more like it. Okay, I'm going to put some gloves on in a sec. Keep leaving their engines on out there. Find out where they live and park outside their house and leave my engine on. See how they like it. Okay, reacting to this right now. I think there's a slightly creamier colour here. Again, still a brush mix. There we go. Let's take a step back from that and see what it does. Okay, it's interesting. I'm going to need another brush here. I might have to break out a few new ones. It's always exciting. Right, let's go back to this brown. No, that's not going to do it because there's not enough paint there. There needs to be loads more. And let's go back here. Take some of that orange, bit of yellow ochre. Put a bit of the grey in it. What I did before. More orange, bit of brown. A bit more yellow ochre. Getting closer. A bit of crimson. Is that too much? Oh, that's pretty good. Brighter. A little bit more yellow. So there's this interesting point where the colours that are on the canvas become more important than the colours that I'm seeing, because they've got their own logic. Now, what's that doing? Comes in here and goes down the gap. There's a limit to the detail I can do. I don't overdo that. There's this imprinted writing on the bottle as well. So I'm going to have to try and hint at that. Let's take that edge in. You know what? Get a bit redder on the side. Or a tiny bit of that green. Let's see if this works as a colour to go down the side. Barely different. Then again, it's barely different. In front of me either. No, I've got rid of my line. I didn't mean to do. There we go. Back to my green. So while I can remember how I did it and where it came from, I'll pop that back in. Along with a little edge on that. A little bit back there. Come back to my creamy colour. A harder edge on the back of that, which it needs. Okay, it's a bit more glassy now. Now this has got quite a lot of paint on the surface. I might be able to even get away with this mix on the surface. Sort of fade in like that, yeah. That's nice. A bit of red in there. Dab in here. with a bit on the inside. I think that's okay. I'm not going to overly fiddle with that. I think a highlight in the right place. And a bit of careful stuff with the neck of it. Where am I? Oh yeah. That was there. That does need to get darker. Especially at the top. And then that background colour needs to do a little bit of magic too, which was on here, wasn't it? There we go. I think that bottle's turning up rather nicely now. I'm going to want the leaves and the flower, and I think the last thing I'll do is this stick bit. And then I'll come back to the background and maybe a little bit of the shadows. And yeah, see if I can make sense of the whole thing. And as that paint gets thicker, it gains more presence and more solidity. So yeah, let's see if anyone's got any who's chipping in. Ah, Sarah's here. Hi Sarah. Welcome. Yeah, so this is I keep having to slow down to make the colour I need, and also I'm kind of getting bolted down in stuff. I haven't got anywhere else to put my brushes, so I'll just keep plonking them here and they'll all cover each other in paint. I'm going to put some gloves on, get a handful of rag, and really start getting stuck into this. Did have some gloves. Where they are? Oh, there they are. So yes, the last few weeks I've been working a little bit quicker. Or doing shorter paintings, I'm not sure which. So this one, yeah, it is a delicate picture, and it wants to, yeah, I want to keep that. I want to keep that sort of delicate feel. I can add a little bit more contrast into this flower, I think, and certainly these Chinese lanterns. If anyone knows if I've got that wrong, or if there's a different name or anything like that, do let me know. I thought I'd lighten this background colour slightly with a little bit of yellow, especially around here. I'm going to put a bit more of that in, just to try stuff out, but I think that's going to work for creating a sense of light moving across. Although tonally it's not lighter, so that's half an hour into this now. Yeah, so I can come back to that. Just make that thinner. Oh, there we go. I think I'm seeing more of this colour now. And around here I'll have a bit of contrast. I need to leave a bit of room for the light. So now I've got this on the brush. Where's that from? Ah, right, that's about where it is actually. So I'm going to make a slightly darker, bluer version of that. Let's see if this works into the surface or if it... Oh yeah, that's definitely a bit bluer. And under here. Before I go darker again... Oh, it's about the same. Anywhere else that needs that sort of colour on it? A little bit in there. Yeah, just darken it at the edges. I don't want to go too far with it. And in here. But I'm not going as far as making sort of fluid, gooey paint. For that sort of typical slosh it about flower painting approach. I want to keep this descriptive. Ooh. Okay. Next place I can go with this is going one darker. Putting that in here. That works. Create a few edges as I go now. I can create an edge over there. Yeah. You in here, just when it gets to the center. A little bit in there, not too much. I'll come back to that, because there's other colours to go into this bit. I've already done that bit. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to go over the top with it, that's all okay. Right. Now I'm going to go for a little green variation. It's only very slight and it's in here, yeah. Is that too green? Ah, that's all right at the edges. That's enough for that. A little bit in here. A bit under there. And that'll do it. Okay, got some of the language of that flower going. Where else does this go? Does this go in here? Yeah, I think it does. So I've got this other colour which I mixed yesterday, which is almost like a kind of burnt sienna. Or no, raw sienna, I guess. But I mixed it, so I can't remember exactly how. There we go. That's effectively dark yellows. So they work that far. Where else are they? Possibly nowhere. No, we're talking about this. No, don't want to overdo that. Right, there's some interesting things on these leaves. Then it gets a little bit lighter and a little bit more into that sort of crisp green colour. I'll shift that across and that can be that little highlight in there. And I think that does it. Oh. Right, anywhere else? No. Okay, now we're into the yellowy greens. I think I mixed them over here. That's not it. Oh, okay, no, this is a completely different one. I can still see where it goes, which is in here. This is where the paint needs to get thicker. I can put the stalk on afterwards. Or a little bit of that might have been too much. Ooh. Don't want to turn the colour up too much. Put some yellow into it next to it. How's that going here? Oh, pretty good actually. Now, are those marks heavy and thick enough? I think they are just about. Yeah. I'm going to want more of that colour. I'm going to start with some white. Yeah, that's pretty good. This can go on a bit thicker. Or yellow. That'll do it. Where else? A little bit up here. Okay, I can go back to that brown now. Put a little bit of green in there, and this should do things like give me an underneath colour in here. Yeah. Very tricky to sort of get that balance right, but that's pretty close. Drag. Cool. Okay. I'm getting the excess off. I'm going back in. There's a bright bit here. And drag that in a bit, let it mix on the surface just so there's a bit of reflected light. And in there. Not too much. Maybe a little bit over the top. Okay, now I've got a very bright bit. I'm going to go all the way over here and have a bit more yellow in there. And that's going to go here. And that I want to be a solid mark. That's not bright enough. Just going to use white and yellow for this. There we go. Where else is that going to go? A little bit in here. Maybe a little bit under there, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, this was a dark green, and this gets really heavy and dark in here. So I'm going to pop a little bit of purple in it, just to push it down a bit more. And a bit of viridian. Still not dark enough. Okay. Violet and viridian, let's see what they do together. Give me an extra dark shadow there. That's too much. Pop a bit into that. We'll create a few extra little shadows on the edges of those leaves. A bit more into here. Okay, so I am aware that I'm kind of mixing on the surface a bit now. Yeah, those leaves are getting a bit more solid. Oh yeah, let's go back to the light here. Got that light colour, got this green, pop a little highlight on the leaf there. Maybe a few bits, a few little veins on the inside of this leaf. Right here. And that'll probably do for that. Okay, while I've got these two on, I could do the stalk. I think I will, actually. I think I'll start with this sort of deeper green. I'll put a bit of brown in there. And again, thick paint, but not too thick. Needs to be a little bit greener than that. Moved away from the green slightly, but there's a bit too much. And I need it to mix with the next layer that goes on top of it. And then when I get down to here, it's going to get browner again. Put some of this in, see what it does. And then darker again. When it comes out of there, goes into the bottle. And then it gets a lot more orange. Comes in here. There's this sort of break because of the refraction of the bottle. Change of direction. There we are. Now when I come to put the green, light green colour on top, it's going to be nice and crisp up here. Is that too light? It is a bit. Got some yellow ochre in there. Something in between the two. It's a bit more like it. I'll put the highlights on here afterwards. What's this doing? Yeah, said I was going to do this with the lights, and that is what I'm attempting. That went over the top. It should not have done. Then it gets a lot more orange. Starting to lose my way here. I'm being too careful, that's why. Needs to go in there. Right, let's put some bright highlights on it. Where was I? Oh yeah, here. That can have one. This can have one along the edge. Nothing I can't fix up with a spatula later on. More yellow. Just have a few little dabs of that. Maybe a bit in here. Yeah, that'll do for that. Still not happy with the dark green along the back of this. Didn't mix in on the surface, so I'm going to go again. Yeah, that's pretty good. Just automatically washed that brush, not sure why. I suppose I've decided I'm not going to put any more dark green on. Hey, how's this looking? I'll have a little pause, see where I'm at. Yeah, it's coming on. And the last things will, yeah, be the flower, and then these little on these lanterns. I'm still not entirely happy with the foreground, but I'm sure I can work into that afterwards. So yeah, what are we going to need next? Next, I guess, would be the highlights on this flower. So I'm going to want to mix a few. You know what, before I do that even, there's room for a bit more yellow in there. Got this yellow ochre, I've got this pale yellow I mixed earlier, but it's a darker colour. I think I'll start with the grey and see how much yellow I can put into the grey. So maybe there's a bit in there. Yeah, quite a bit in there. Some in here. Definitely some in that. Where hasn't got it? There's a few places that don't have it. There's a sort of a lighter one. Creeps out of the gaps. Back here. And then we get into the lighter one, this sort of. Right. Okay, so I started with this. I've got this this grey colour, which is kind of the one I started with. And this is quite loose. This has got a bit of oil in it. How cool is that? Maybe a bit too cool. Yeah. It needs to be slightly darker than the background. keep that on the blue side. Still not really much darker, so not brown enough. How about that? That's a bit more like it. I'll put a few of these bits in first. These are going to represent light shadows. And then we'll go one lighter than that when the time comes. Yeah, there's a few bits back here. Right. Let's go one lighter than that. I'm keeping the paint fairly thick here. We can put a few highlights on here and here. Up on there before the really bright highlights turn up inside of that petal. Along this one. And inside of that. Yeah, when it comes to the really bright highlights, it means I can afford to be a little bit flamboyant. But I also don't end up putting them everywhere there's a highlight. It's just the very brightest bits. Anything that doesn't qualify as the very brightest bit doesn't get done. I'll go one lighter than this and add a bit of yellowness. Just for a few bits and pieces. Before I get to the very bright highlights. Nice little edge on that. Well, a bit on there. Where else? Quite interesting, actually. Some of these are kind of making highlights without actually committing to the brightest lights. It's going to give me a bit of leeway as I go. A few little details. Especially, yeah. Especially with this petal here. There we are. That's white. Put a bit of creaminess into it. Now it's possible this might be a bit too thick, but that sits up nicely. How's that look? Does that jump out the way I need it to? I think it rather does. I can work from the edges of the petals inwards to get some of that movement. I guess this is possibly the brightest bit. Yeah, I don't want to make these too regular either. Keep that. There's those crumpled bits of petal. Swoop there. This voluminous bit here captures the light. sort of an edge. In some places the edges are more important. There's just a dash of bright light across the middle, it's not the whole thing. The edges of here start out there and then they find their way in. How's that look? And that. And that. And here. I've still got one more sort of layer to go because I can bring in the yellow. I think I might do that. Right, there's an edge there. That's sort of important. No, that's all right. Yeah, there's a yellow to come in here. It's got a white edge on it. So yeah, one last bit. Let's add a little bit of yellow to it just to give it some extra brightness. It should sit up even more. There we go. Who else needs a bit of that? You do. Just the tips of those. It's a petal there. Of a point to these. More of an edge on that. The petal sticking out behind. Even here. Yeah. I've done all this sort of trusting my process, and now I get to stand back and decide whether it's awful. Yeah, I think that's pretty awful. Maybe it's okay. It's very hard to decide. Need a bit more of this sort of language in it. But then again, all I'll do is fiddle otherwise. And fiddling is the enemy. There we go. More bits of light. I'm just letting it mix on the surface now. A bit of light that comes in here. Not too much. A little bit at the edges of these petals. As long as I've still got most of that contrast. Be okay, I'll get away with it. Yeah. Take a little bit away again. Oh, there you are. That does it. Leaves that yellow behind. Just a dash and a dash. Not 100% on it, but not too bad. Okay. You know what? This might need a sort of a scrape and a spatula and then a revisit. Hopefully not too much, especially if it's sort of sympathetic to the forms. Yeah, that could have done with a bit of that yellow on the inside, so I can hopefully put that in now. Maybe here, same sort of thing. That's kind of okay. I mean, I think it looks how I want it to look. Got 100% on it. Yeah, maybe I'll come back to that. In the meantime, I'll come back to this orange that I was talking about earlier. Make it a bit brighter, a bit yellower, a bit pinker. I wonder if try this out here. I think not yellow enough. It might be too yellow now. Right here. No. Okay, turn up the orange for this. This is where you could go full sort of Dutch still life painter and just do layers and layers and glazes and glazes. Do need to make the effort to keep some variety of colour and types of mark making. So you know what I'll do? I'll make a little variation of this as it goes across. I'll go with the most orange here. That's going to be these bits. And here. Sort of crinkle that goes down. Little crease on the underneath. This one's got a bit of that sort of quality to it as well. This does rather a nice job of these sort of sticks in between. There's a lot of orange in those. There's a few splashes of yellow to go on as well, but there we go. Okay, I'm going to need a darker orange next to this to visit, which will involve some of this brown. And that will give me some of this colour here. I think that's right. Needs a bit more yellow in it. There we go. Okay, that's better. And then there's a cooler yellow, cooler orange. I'm just going to go on top. Are these Chinese lanternish yet? That's the other question. You need to go all the way to that brown and drag a few of the darks in it. There'll be some highlights later on. And a few really, really deep shadows. That's what that's doing. Yeah, let's go back to that orange. I'm going to get a tiny bit of oil now just to make this flow. I'll do a few of these little sticks, these little stems. There we go. Yeah, let's mix some of these darks. I'm going to use some alizarin. What's left of that brown. And straight up yellow. Do some of these darker shadows. There we go. That's got a bit more red in it. That has now, although I'm not 100% sure it should have. That does and should have. Crease down the middle. A little bit of warmer red in there. Anywhere else? There you are. Then we'll make a cooler one, which is also dark. It's going to go in here. Some shadows in there. Gone very quiet. That's not it. Yeah, some cool shadows over that side. Definitely a few here as well. And then that can lead me to the cooler lights, which are going to be adjacent. I'll pour a little bit of that orange, but not much. And they're going to go here. Yeah, almost violet looking as they go on. And here. They've got some. A little bit. Not much. Spotting other little bits of colour here. think that's okay. I think, yeah, I'm fussing about this too much. Right, let's go back to those lights. A bit of yellow ochre. See what we can pull out. Oh, what's you doing? Okay. Right, these lanterns are starting to appear a little now. Yeah, there's a little bit of highlight under that. Didn't need that, I was in the wrong place. Nice little highlight around the corner. Quite a lot over here. A little bit at the top there. The last thing I think it needs is, oh yeah, there's that yellowy highlight that I wanted to put in on a few of these, like this here. That needs it. That gets a bit. Oh, quite a few of them do actually. Ah, how did the blue get onto that? There we go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the highlights. Pop a bit more of that on here. Doesn't take much. That is enough. A few little chunks to go inside that. No, that's the wrong colour. Get back to the orange for this. There we are. And lastly, yeah, a little brush on a proper dark colour. Just to get some of those deep shadows in. These little flicks at the bottom there. Where else? A little bit here. There's some. Mm-hmm. That's good fun. Now this is this sort of structure to these little seams and things. I'm not going to overdo it. He says overdoing it, like always. That'll be enough. A few of these darks emanating from the middle of this, just to demonstrate the shape. A few of those underneath. I go back to my green now and put in another shape there. So I've got the neck of the bottle. That's going to go there. I can put that line in the right place. It doesn't need it. I'm overdoing it. Okay, here's my background colour I was playing with which a tiny dab of oil, in fact. We'll get a few edges around these petals here. And sort of let that light play across a little bit, put some direction into that flower. Yeah, let's really put the yellow up in that corner. There we go. I don't think I have to do any more to the shadows, actually. I think they're okay. Here's where this is going to be useful. Shape the bottom of that petal with the background colour. A bit of that into here, and that leaf as well. And all the time it sort of builds texture and a bit of variety into the background, gives it a bit more life. Whoa. Oh, I think I'm all right with this. I think I'm nearly used the H word then, but I daren't really. Yeah, let's play those shadows down a little bit. Doesn't take much. Yeah, that's certainly given us some mood. I haven't been paying much attention to this shadow here. Maybe the green brush isn't the one to do it with. That's the shadow colour, and I guess that's what we're going to use. There we are. Oh, put a bit of red into these shadows, that makes a difference. Especially just in the middles. Yeah, that's enough of a shadow on that. It carries over into here. So the last bits will be, actually no, it was a good brush to do it with. Let's stick with the big brush. And go back to these greens. I'm going to have a little bit there, a bit here. I'm not entirely sure about that. Not enough paint there. I'm just hinting at this. I'm not actually getting it. Nearly done. Wonder if there's any input. Oh, here we are. Hello. Oh, intermittent sound. Hopefully that's a slightly better sound. Oh, hi Lewis. Yes, so the fiddling. Yes, it's a danger, isn't it? But I'm not fiddling just yet. There's a few things do need doing. It's tiny little details, but they're important. And one is the little highlights. Oh, this yellowy light colour that are going to land in this bottle here. There's one. There's one on the lip, and there's a couple on the other side. These go a little bit greener. They're going to go here and here. I'll highlight down there. Oh, and tiny tad yellower. Great. There's one on the neck of the bottle. It's a very pale bluish one. I'm just going to put down there. Pale blue colour under here. And there's this very pale green. This is going to give me a little in there. Probably being a bit yellower, but I think I'll get away with it. What else? Right, last bit with the background colour. So the base, this area. You can warm that up slightly. And there's a few places. So there's this sort of reflection from here. It streaks out that way, which is quite fun. Also got the same thing from here, which gives me the angle at the bottom of the bottle. Gives me this light on the inside. And then while I've got that on the brush, that little streak of light in. Okay, now it's not making any difference, so now it's time to sign it. Yeah, a bit of balance over that side, that's quite nice. Flatten it out a bit. That do it. That's great. Right, I'm definitely stopping now. What colour to sign it in? That's the fun part. I think it's got to have to be a reference to that orange colour. I'll use my dark orange here. Well, that's not dark enough, is it? Let's do that again. Let's use a bit of oil because it just won't flow. Here we are. Do a little brief tour of this. I don't know if it helps to. I've got a few different lights on, so I don't think a polarizing filter is going to do an awful lot. But there you are. Now this is slightly distorted because obviously to make the image square. Oh, it's gone juddery. There you are. There's quite a few sort of subtleties and in the in the background colours and what have you. So I hope that comes across. And thank you very much for joining me and watching this evening. And oh, there you are. Hello. Oh, I'm going to make a sweet cup of tea. Thanks for coming and joining in, and I'll see you next time. Hello.